if Josh is taking a break from snorting nutmeg and playing Pokemon to tweet something that's so hardly worded like this, then it's a thing. Like it's this negligence is this is very strongly worded from Josh, someone who is actually fairly safe and stays away from some of the more polarizing issues in esports in general. He is this is about as strongly worded as you're going to get from Josh. Because I was so prepared for this show. I have watched all of the EU streams so far from VCT challenges. Aren't you fucking impressed? Brian, tell us what's going on over across the pond here in terms of the EU streams.
So the general gist is, over the past week, we've had some really good broadcasts in North America going over the open part of the qualifiers. Very big contrast, and there's plenty of iterations of that as time has gone on. Some of which, with the help of Mitch and his constant talk about what Nerd Street have been doing. But at least that's changed. For Europe, it stayed the same. We don't get an actual broadcast of the open qualifiers section, even up to the round of 16, which had some insane games going on. And because of that, we just can't build the narratives. We don't know what's going on with the likes of G2, Team Liquid. As somebody that tries to follow the scene to a point to kind of answer the questions on shows like this on what is going on with G2, I can tell you my answer. I don't fucking know. I can't see the games. They're not being streamed. There's nothing going on at the moment, and it makes it very difficult to care about Europe right now. And I just hope that this changes. I mean, what now? Like, if I go over to the Europe stream, it's the main one at least. There's 2.5K viewers, and the Valorant stream is 15K, which is a little bit better, but it's the fact that there's no broadcasted games. Also, bear in mind, not really sort of talking about myself here, there are casters that can't do any other region other than Europe. And there's 4 games, and there's 8 casters vying to be in that sort of thing, including the likes of Pansy, Hypoc, and Mitch. And then you got Average Jonas that sort of comes in and goes, yeah, I want to do a bit. Surely if you're a European caster that's sort of been making your way through, and I don't mean myself, like I'll be fine no matter what, but there are people that have done a lot of good work that will not get a chance to cast in Europe in any of the official VCT stuff. But most importantly, the orgs, G2 are putting in a ton of money for this team, and they can't even be on a broadcast. They can't build fans if their games are being streamed, and nobody really knows what's going on with these players. So I feel there's a lot of examples like this with the Europe LCS way back when, but I think this is much more different. And also, going to be very careful with my words. This in itself, because this lasts for the rest of 2021 with this TO and everything that's going on, it could be really damaging for Europe in the future, I think, if they don't get a hold on it. To be fair, they have listened in other feedback and improved stuff, but it was changing a lot of the series from best of ones to best of threes, which should never realistically have been something that needed fixing in the first place. But I think that this is a whole different can of worms. You have a lot of stuff to do with co-streaming and running your own broadcasts because of all of the different languages. A lot of laws in Europe. I know people kind of say that that isn't the case. It is. That's why there's no co-streams of the LEC that you can watch on stream. And yeah, it's just a really difficult thing that if you can't get people interested in the Europe scene, let's say the EMEA teams don't do well at Reykjavik, who's going to care about this scene? A scene that might have its own league at some point, and a lot of money goes into it. But if you're looking at stuff so far, and I say this with a lot of love and passion for the Europe scene, why bother?
But
this, I mean, you go, Vince.
No, sorry. I just wanted to ask at the same time too. Like, if we didn't have an issue of like co-streaming, or we didn't have the issue of like getting matches streamed, would we have the same number of viewership and growth than we would in NA, just off your experience from watching NA right now, and then seeing where EU is at?
I think so. I think what it would do as well is it would allow certain content creators and streamers to elevate themselves to a point where they're not so much ambassadors for the scene, but you kind of get people interested in it a little bit more. I think of people like LS, for example, in the league scene, who is, an ambassador of Korean play because he coached teams like T1, right? And so when you see him on like the LEC stream, for example, he's always like, Korea's the best region and stuff, don't at me. People like Monty and stuff did it for the Overwatch League and stuff, tearing off his shirt and showing the Korean jersey. I think having those people in the scenes to be the main people to go to, like, sure, you have, like, I'd like to consider myself, but if I don't consider myself, Vala's been taking a lot more interest personally, streaming a lot of the VODs and stuff. Obviously, Plat Chat talks about the region quite a bit. But other than that, when you compare who cares about Europe in comparison to North America via the viewership, even the Reddit and how often people talk about certain things, it's just night and day on a region that is typically seen as one of the strongest and one of the most innovative when it comes to compositions and the way that they play. Just not being able to get the spotlight that they respectively deserve.
Well, I mean, there's also the other end of the story where like other regions can't really prep on them. There's no tape, so
Yeah.
there's like an advantage there for them. But that's really tangential. I mean, I spoke to Jonas. He just wants to fucking co-stream. He doesn't give a shit about casting. He'd rather co-stream if he had the option to do so.
Yeah,
So,
he just wants to be
listen,
involved, but so many others do.
I get it. So I kind of understand that there are some issues when it comes to co-streaming, right? Do those issues extend to having an English-speaking broadcast for the open qualifiers? Like, is that actually the issue here? Do we know that? Because what's stopping them from co-streaming and what's stopping, Freaks for You for having a fucking English broadcast? I'm not sure if these are the same things.
So this is me guessing in regards to why some of these games are broadcasted, and I don't mean this in a negative way at all, but I guess money. You do a broadcast, you need to pay rates for people. And to be fair, when you look at the talent that they have for Europe with like Pansy, Hypop Mitch, they have some tier 1 casters, right?
Sure.
So the actual quality of broadcast is really good. And I'm not saying that some of the other regions aren't, for example. And you could definitely see in other regions like North America, they're honing talent. They're bringing in people like Tana Metro to get that experience and to climb the ranks. And he could certainly be up there as one of the best casters in Valorant in the future, no doubt. But I do think that it's one of those things where people want to help. Hell, even Pansy tweeted out saying, I will do this for free. Let me stream the guild. Who were they playing? I think it was like...
Which is already problematic as it is, but that's fine.
Yeah, but like, people want to do stuff for the scene, not because they want to get paid or to sort of increase their own branding, because they want to show these games off because they give a shit about the scene. And it's very difficult when you have people that care about something that want to fawn over and talk about some of these teams that really are in the discussion, but they can't because there's no expertise that they could bring because they never watch the games. Literally, like, there's a player that's coming for G2 called Ozzy. A lot of people are like, what's he like? Because we haven't seen him on a stream at all. We're looking at like the Spike.gg for
last
stats.
Time we saw screenplay.
Exactly.
Yeah, they were just saying in chat, right? LBJ was saying we didn't even see Yampy play yet for Liquid.
Exactly. Like, all I know from that is watching one scrim personally, how they played. And that doesn't tell me anything, right? Like, it's very hard to try and care about the scene. Speaking as a person that's tried to put myself out there as kind of like, I'll try and be the Europe guy, digest it all. It's very difficult for me to understand what's going on. And the amount of people have sort of come out and said that, like, this is really damaging. I mean, Sideshow's saying that he knows better than most when it comes to Europe.
If Josh is taking a break from snorting nutmeg and playing Pokemon to tweet something that's so hardly worded like this, then it's a thing. Like, it's this negligence is. This is very strongly worded from Josh, someone who is actually fairly safe and stays away from some of the more polarizing issues in esports in general. He is. This is about as strongly worded as you're going to get from Josh.
Yeah,
maybe that's why they're playing Pokemon, because they just can't watch any fucking games.
Well, to be fair, I mean, that's a whole other story. I think Josh has a lot of VODs to catch up on, to be fair, but he's a machine in that regard. He's got the work ethic.
100%.
Yeah, he calls it negligence. The stream schedule between NA and EU is obviously vastly different. Here's my question. Here, by the way, I mean, this is NSG just being very good. Let me just make something very clear, though. Tournament organizers have to pay Riot to run this stuff. They have to pay Riot. There is a licensing fee that they have to pay with absolutely zero guarantee that licensing fee can be recouped running a fucking online tournament or broadcasting an online tournament. You kind of have to sell sponsors for this stuff, and you have to make sure your sponsors don't conflict with Riot sponsors for their actual in-house events. For example, you couldn't use, let's use Mountain Dew. You couldn't use Mountain Dew Game Fuel as a sponsor because it likely conflicts with Red Bull if Riot are already working with them, which we kind of know they are. So
Mhm.
there are some precluded categories that you as a tournament organizer cannot sell sponsorship to because it would conflict. So your ability as a tournament organizer to make money off running one of these events with Riot, you're already having to pay out of pocket the staff, the casters, which you best believe they're paying properly now, and Riot's licensing fee to do this. So where do you make the money? Nerd Street Games is, without saying too much, their business model is a bit different. You know what I mean? They can sort of subsidize this for Riot, because the way that they actually turn a profit from doing stuff like this isn't in the normal way. Or people like ESL, right? That was how they did it. They would come in and run an event for Riot. They would sell the sponsors, sell the tickets, all that stuff, and then they would, try and make money. But there's always a licensing fee that is involved in this. And, you list that when you tender for this event. It looks like you can see that Freaks for You are not listed as a broadcast partner for challenges here in Europe. Now, now that's interesting.
I know why.
This,
kind of.
Go on.
So, like, there's a type of event called whitelisted events, which typically, white label even. Jesus. A good example of this is Blast. We know Blast, what they do, Counter-Strike, all that stuff. It's always on Blast's channel. But when they did First Strike, it was on this new Valorant _esports_EU _1. Christ, no, God knows what else. It wasn't on the Blast channel, nor was there any branding of Blast anywhere. I mean, you could tell it was the Blast office because of the setup, and it had Banks on it and Maniac and all that kind of stuff. But there wasn't Blast anywhere. The same way, if you check out the stream, you're not going to see any Freaks for You branding. It's not on the Freaks for You channel because they don't, or maybe Riot don't want it, or maybe it's a typical thing where they will want their branding to be on it. Maybe because it's Europe, they do things differently. But that's the main thing, is that people don't really understand this. I had this today as well, where I did like an interview with the main dev from the gameplay side of it. People asking him questions about the skins and stuff, the cosmetics. Riot is multiple pillars of different things, and Europe and North America are very different teams. That's why one of the frustrating things about Region Lock is that they both kind of do their own thing and don't really communicate with each other on that topic in particular. So NA are doing great. They're doing all of their stuff, and Europe are quite happy to do what they're doing. And Riot might be happy and content with the things the way they are currently, right? So it's a really difficult and frustrating thing to deal with. But I think it's important people understand that Riot, Freaks for You, Nerd Street Gamers, they're all their different entities, and they're not the best at communicating with one another because for the most part they don't need to, right? They just focus on their neck of the woods and focus on that alone. So that's kind of the difference between Freaks for You. I don't know if they're taking a lower cut. I don't know any of that, but that typically comes in with doing like a white label event, I'd imagine, right? Because you don't get your branding on there too.
I'm just
sorry.
I was
the
just
difference
thinking,
between white and blue label events, just so
Okay,
you
okay.
guys know. Yeah.
Okay, because I was just wondering at that point, then, if Freaks for You, they weren't listed there, is it because that they are just...
Even if it's blue label, they probably should be listed there as a production partner.
Yeah.
So it could just be that someone hasn't fucking edited the page.
Maybe somebody just didn't know, because we didn't know until partway through challenges, right?
Yeah.
I would say, as good as Valorant is, there are a lot of tournament organizers who just don't see any fucking reason to work with them on challenges. Nerd Street Games are different. They don't have to be tied to making a clean profit off the event in terms of selling sponsors versus the costs of running the event. But ESL are, Esports Engine are, I'd say Freaks for You are probably to a degree as well. So, because here's what happens, right? This happened in the LCS. Like, the LCS was blue label. ESL ran the LCS, but it was the LCS, and it was a Riot branded event, but it was operated out of the LCS studio, the ESL studio in Cologne. Now, so ESL ran pretty much all of it, right? With the Riot esports team was getting involved, but all the people on the ground, the actual the producers and stuff like that, a lot of them were ESL. Riot took that back in house eventually in Berlin. They wanted to have more control. They wanted to change the brand. They wanted to modernize it. Whatever. Eventually became the LEC. A fair few ESL employees went over to Riot. In fact, D-Man and Joe Miller were also offered to go and become Rioters. They both declined that. They stayed with ESL. But ESL was like, okay, not only do we not have the product, but also our fucking employees are just jumping ship now. Why the fuck did we spend all these years, building up this brand for you to fucking take it in-house and fuck off and take a bunch of our employees with you? You know what I mean? So I'm sure that there's a similar fear right now as well that, you know, for those teams that make, for orgs that make significant investments in helping Riot build up Valorant in terms of these, you know, these blue label events, what will happen when, you know, if or when Riot decides to franchise? I don't necessarily see, I necessarily see a world where Riot don't just do it themselves. Riot now have the capacity to be their own tournament organizer and their own developer, right? And it's also the same reason why you don't see many third-party Overwatch events, because first of all, it's fucking not worth it for these tournament organizers. There's not a profit structure there for them. And also, Blizzard have developed the capacity to run this shit themselves, which is what all developers usually want to do, because they don't have to deal with like a third party potentially like messing with their direction or their brand or their optics. They can control the whole narrative. They can do it all. Valve are the only ones that don't care. They've never been interested in developing the capacity to do that. And I would argue that in some senses, that's been good for their games. The Counter-Strike scene was allowed to exist in the way that it has in the past because Valve never tried to take it in-house, never tried to make it their own, never tried to, you know, maybe that's why fucking tournament organizers like ESL were able to stay afloat. You know, they had, I know well, I used to work at ESL. They had to completely pivot from their structure of coming in and running these events. They all of a sudden, they got rid of their own producers. They started outsourcing staff, equipment, and everything because they couldn't afford to just fucking keep them in the office waiting for a tournament organizer to get them to run an event for them. They had to change their way when MTG got involved because developers were taking their stuff in-house and the old business models didn't work anymore. That's why NSG are able to do such good work, because they don't fucking live or die on whether Riot gives them a good deal.
Yeah.
But they are one of the very few TOs that have that freedom.
It also helps them to be synonymous with Valorant esports in North America as well. Nobody knew who Nerd Street Gamers were a year ago. Like now they're very well known for being the Valorant TO, right? I guess just sort of finally on this, I think sort of speaking from this perspective, I want to say Europe has the potential to be great under Freaks for You. I don't think it's a problem with the TO. It actually kind of annoys me that they get so much flack. We don't know if this is a decision made from them or Riot to not broadcast the open qualifiers. All I will say is, if it's Riot or Freaks for You watching this, it would do the world good. I think that NSG have built up a good faith relationship with the community in North America. It makes it very difficult to do stuff in Europe. It's always going to be hard to compare North America to Europe with how TOs run stuff because it's vastly different. Even the budgets are hugely different. Believe me, I know as a European content creator that the budgets over here are not that good. But I do think it's worthwhile, either if you just spend that extra money on the rates of the broadcasters to do those days, or whether you allow people, like I think of like Sam Nairi, who can not do another region other than Europe. Give her the chance to do those broadcasts. Give people the chance to either stream these on their own channels so they can at least get the viewership and get subscribers through their own means to do these top tier games. If you have people like Pansy turning around and saying that they want to cover these games, there is going to be a lot more people that want to do that would be happy to be involved so long as the circumstances are fair. I beg you, because it's worthwhile, and I hope that you consider this. Otherwise, it's going to be a really long year.
And real quick, sorry, and just because also there's just so many matches happening at once too, right? We're looking at an open bracket of X amount of teams. So if you're able to like just choose that bigger match and put it on that mainstream that you want to get it in, and then the other ones, like Ryan was saying, to be able to be covered by the community streamers, community casters, content creators, so that at least those matches will be streamed and their name will get out. They don't need to be on the main broadcast when they want to make it out there. They just need some content to produce. And right now we don't have the opportunity for that content to be produced.
So this issue in Europe, it may change soon. Kazra Fruity, who is, I believe, the head of global esports operations for Valorant, did an interview on the Washington Post where he sort of discussed this. So, you know, he tries to give as simple an explanation as possible. It's the multilingual nature of Europe. And there are a lot of different countries in Europe that have their different requirements and such. And I think he makes a perfectly fine point. Ultimately, what works in North America isn't going to work in Europe.
Sure.
That still doesn't really excuse the lack of an English stream but we understand why like co-streaming can actually be a problem. That's fine. I know that this is a legitimate thing. It also, you know, Jafruti also kind of passes the buck to the European localization team for Valorant esports. He's like, listen, I'm global. You know, the European crew will do this. You know what I mean? On their timeline, right? So it's a little bit of a nothing burger. the problem is that people do, we are getting to the point where people do need to accept that there is a real, a legitimate issue with co-streaming and how that works in Europe, in terms of how, you know, the content is served up to different countries, right? Like, for example, like you can't bet with channel points in some European countries. It's just banned. Like in the Netherlands, you can't do it, as an example, right? So you are dealing with, people think America is confusing enough with all these state legislation that conflicts, but it's far worse in Europe. So I get that. That is a legitimate, I've had it explained to me. I still don't fucking get it, but it's a thing. It's a whole damn thing. I think we're dealing with sort of, yeah, two different issues though, guys, right? We got obviously the co-streaming and then the lack of fucking casting or anything being put on there. But listen, I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't exactly a long line of tournament organizers knocking on Riot's door in Europe to run their shit, because for the way that their business models are, it probably doesn't make any fucking sense.
I mean, that's a negative, right? If you've got a whole lot of Reddit people saying that Europe's been run to the ground by the TO, that Riot's going to see that and go, what the hell's going on? Especially the North American part, like the global esports part of it, see all of that and go, what is going on in Europe? So they sort of go in and check, and they understand why. Like I said, it just doesn't bode well for the TOs, who might be the one getting a lot of the flack when they don't deserve to. I just feel that this was a bit of a, like, Europe's always had problems, let's be honest. Like, we've had all sorts of pretty rough ignition events, but because that was early days, it was very easy to kind of gloss over that. Now, when you have going into an international event where North American teams will meet European teams in May, this is where you start to compare the regions and actually go, this isn't fair. Like, we don't have double elimination in this part of the closed qualifiers, for example. What would help? A B stream, have double elim, have more broadcasts, more talent, more games being broadcasted. Just, it helps a lot. But I think the main thing I want to say that a lot of people took from the Kazra thing is that, oh, there isn't any laws that stop people from co-streaming. There is. I think he just sort of glossed over it in a case. Like,
yeah, he did.
Because like the LEC doesn't allow that as well. You have people at Ender coming out and saying it's not a thing here. B, I don't want to leak too much, but I've spoken to Riot people myself that say that this is a thing. So it's more problematic than maybe Kazra makes it out to be. So don't act like there's nothing stopping them, because there is. And it's not Freaks for You's fault that there's no co-stream. So people are connecting some really weird dots, and I'd rather the people actually complain about the things that deserve to be complained about to the right parties, right? Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah. One of these days, maybe we'll get an interview about that and we can really dig into the specifics. But I mean, I believe it is astoundingly complex.
Yeah. It'd be nice to talk to that. Is it Crowler, the guy that said that we missed the mark with First Strike?
Crowler. Yeah.
I would like to talk to him right now. Not because, you know, everything that's happened since to be like, you missed a marker. Not to be like that. It's just more like, I'm curious of where Riot stand with this, whether they're happy themselves, whether it's down to them. I think the main thing about a lot of this is it would be nice to get a couple of answers on how Europe has been run currently, because not saying anything just makes it hurt even more, I guess.
Yeah. I guess I just want to ask one real quick question, because you guys are talking about laws and stuff like that too, and it's unfamiliar territory for me too. What's an example of one of these laws that doesn't allow for you to get these co-streams?
I think it's more like I know there's an image that I sent the guys when it comes to broadcasting rights, like for the LEC. And you look at all of the different partners and all of the stuff. For example, Freaks for You do the German broadcast for the LEC. I'm pretty sure. So you're seeing all of these ones. Trovo's obviously super involved because it's Tencent, and Tencent is Riot. There's all of these partners. And I think that if you allow, I don't know, Mixwell to do a Spanish stream of the, maybe that's a bad example, like Hitbox, he's a Spanish streamer that follows the Giants games, right? If you allow him, then LVP can go, well, we're not going to pay as much money to do the Spanish broadcast of the LEC or whatever the Valorant equivalent would be, because you're letting some Spanish streamers do that. You've got Greg F as well that's been super interested in the Valorant scene, that accidentally co-streamed it when he shouldn't, but who's going to really tell him not to, right? He's got like 40k viewers watching him for that alone. So yeah, it's more about, when you look at where the LEC makes its money for the most part, I imagine a good portion of it is broadcasting rights in various languages. If they allow people to co-stream, they lose that leverage to have people pay as much. Because if anybody could do it, why should the broadcast right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's where they make their money.
Jesus Christ! Like, again, NSG don't live or die off broadcast rights. You know, they sell sponsors, but what they do is they get co-streamers to sort of send them their analytics. But you cannot they do not equate, like Shroud's analytics viewers do not equate 1-to-1 with your viewers as NSG in terms of your sponsors. Like they don't want, it's great, it helps, but it's not the same. Like Overwatch doesn't have co-streaming. Motherfuckers have to like take a screenshot of the clock and put it on the screen so you can sync up the two streams and watch them, because we sold the broadcast to YouTube for big money. Like that's a thing. And Riot are probably going to do that if they franchise this league. If they don't do it, then I'll be kind of surprised, because it's a huge way of making money. It's kind of how you fucking pay people. So